Okay, thank you, Mohan. Thanks for that. Good morning, everybody. My name is Carl Barron. I am one of the business development managers for XPS Self-Invested Pensions, and we recently went on panel with your group. So this presentation, it's going to be relatively brief. I don't want to keep you too long because the weather's quite nice out there, certainly where we are. Please feel free to ask questions at any time during this presentation, and there will be time at the end as well. I'm looking to do no more than sort of 3/4 of an hour total, an hour if pushed, depending on the number of questions. So it's entirely up to you guys to as to how long you really want this to be. There's only about 10 slides. I am not going to be over technical about this. Myself and my other colleagues will be in touch with you over the next days, week, just to say hello via emails. They and me will also send you some information, and if there's any technical stuff that you really need, that's the time to do it. So without further ado, I'll carry on. So moving on, here we go. And wouldn't you just know it, all of a sudden, the whole thing just stops working when you want it to go. So I've done the introduction, and now what I need to do is go forward. Here we go. Yeah, so this is what I'm going to do today, the agenda. It's a brief introduction about XPS and the SIPP and SSAS business, our target market, because that impacts on what happens with products and so on. We look at commercial property, the types of properties that have been bought by clients. We look at SIPP and SSAS differences, pros and cons of owning property in pensions, some ideas and solutions, the SSAS market and unregulated introducers, because that's going to be a big area. We are seeing a big uptick here in introductions from accountants, which is part of the reason why I'm doing this presentation. It's to look for opportunities and some of the differences, but certainly opportunities with some of the introducers that you might have, such as accountants. So XPS Group PLC, that company, the XPS Group, it's the largest true pensions company in the UK. We only, oops, I can hear some background noise. We only deal with pensions. The group, XPS Group, deals with some of the biggest pension schemes in the country. They've been around for 40 years. We, XPS Self-Invested Pensions, form a smaller part of the XPS Group company. We administer about 4,000 commercial properties and land assets within self-invested pensions. So the XPS Group PLC deal with sort of defined benefit contribution, sort of defined benefit schemes. We, XPS Self-Invested Pensions, are purely SIPP and SSAS. Our target market. So this is not now the XPS Group, this is XPS Self-Invested Pensions. We are looking for SIPP and SSAS clients who are looking to build significant pension assets, looking to consolidate existing pensions, looking to do quite large, we see regular or one-off contributions, but ultimately really looking to directly get involved with commercial property and land. That's where our expertise is, XPS Self-Invested Pensions. It's really SIPP, SSAS, and buying commercial property. Now, clearly, we don't just do commercial property, but it is a big part of our business. Briefly going to touch on our product range. The Simply SIPP takes up to 2 investments, excluding property. So a few examples you can see there on the screen. The Full SIPP will invest in just about anything, so long as it's regulated. It does everything that the Simply SIPP does, and it also takes commercial property and land. And then we've got the XPS SSAS, which is traditionally a product that's used for families and small medium firms, for instance. These days, the main reason for having a SSAS is the employer loan back. Although, of course, commercial property and land is still a really popular investment when it comes to SSAS. And I will expand on SSAS at a later stage. So the differences between SIPP and SSAS. First of all, a self-invested personal pension, it falls under personal pension rules. Effectively, you've got one overriding trust, and that governs all the other SIPPs that we set up. So you can almost imagine it in a way being like a coat hanger. So we've set this, we get HMRC approval for the SIPP, the main SIPP trust, and then all the other pensions, all the other SIPPs hang off that one overriding trust. So once we've got that set up, it's set up. Therefore, setting up a new SIPP literally takes a couple of days at the most. The effect of that is that if you've got time concessions, if you've got issues with time when it comes to property purchase, then a SIPP is a pretty good option because, of course, it can be set up really quickly. I've just mentioned it's quick to set up. Generally, SIPPs are less expensive than SSAS, and investment decisions are made by the member only. So effectively, you as a financial advisor and the member decide what's going to happen regarding the investments, and you do it. Nobody else gets involved. Joint SIPPs allow unlimited membership. So we can create, if you like, a whole number of individual SIPPs to get involved in purchasing a large commercial property. We don't charge anything extra for creating that joint SIPP. It's just that each member has their own SIPP, and then we wrap a joint SIPP around all the individual SIPPs, and then they can go off and, of course, combining their monies, buy a large property. And a SIPP cannot give a loan to a sponsoring employer. It can make loans to third parties, but it cannot make a loan to the sponsoring employer. SSAS, that comes under occupational rules, generally defined contribution. Now, there is a quirky little beast called a defined benefit SSAS, which we don't get involved in. They're quite expensive. You need an actuary to be involved, and it is a truly defined benefit arrangement. Now, that's being used to make very large employer contributions over and above the annual allowance. We see that as being problematical because HMRC may well look at that. They haven't done yet, but they may well look at that in the future and see it as a tax avoidance arrangement. It's not happened yet, but HMRC have looked at SSAS in the past and some of the mechanisms that were used inside SSAS to do things around tax, and they've closed those down. They've stopped it happening. So whether or not the defined benefit SSAS has got legs, we just don't know. But generally, you could say 95% of the SSAS written are going to be defined contribution. Every SSAS that's written is individually registered with HMRC. Now, this currently is a bit of an issue because it's taking HMRC around 6 months to set up a new SSAS, and that's because of all the background checking that they want done. And of course, since COVID, they've had a lot of people working from home. They've had a backlog. We actually thought the timeframes would come down, and in fact, they've increased. So now, as I say, it's about 6 months to get their new SSAS set up. Excuse me. The issue there is if you've got clients looking to use pension money to get involved in property, unless they own the property themselves, or their company owns the property themselves, you've got to ask how long will a vendor wait to have that property purchased? Because 6 months to set the SSAS up, and then you've probably got another 3 months to arrange the property purchase. So in a situation like that, clients really might need to look at using a SIPP because it can be set up so much more quickly. SSAS are generally more expensive just because they're individually. And the members have to have something called unanimous decision making. Now, that means that every member trustee makes the decisions, and all the decisions have to be agreed between all the members. If you get one member deciding that they don't like what's being sort of proposed, then that member can stop all the other members doing anything. So the scheme can effectively get gridlocked. And there have been instances where this happens, where, I know a particular case. It was a firm of estate agents, not in this neck of the woods. There were seven directors. They all got along fine. Then one of those directors decided to go out on his own and set up a competitor business. And he could not be forced out of the SSAS that company had. And he was still able to make investment decisions. So the scheme got gridlocked for quite a long time until he agreed to leave. But it took a long time. And that's something to bear in mind with SSAS. SSAS is a very good tool, but you have to be pretty sure that the members are going to get along and do the right things for the right reasons in the right way. Can't always predict that in the future. SSAS has a maximum of 11 members. Very often you see up to 12, but it is up to 12, meaning 11 members only. Whereas with a joint SIPP, you could effectively have as many members stroke SIPPs attached to your property as you would like. Loans to sponsoring employers are allowed. The sponsoring employer, so the member's own company, can get a loan from the SSAS. Currently, and it's not going to change as far as we know, that maximum loan is up to 50% of the net assets in the scheme. So if you've got £200,000 sitting in a SSAS, then potentially the SSAS could make £100,000 loan to the sponsoring employer. Now, there are a whole series, there are sort of 5 rules surrounding loan backs, loans to sponsoring employers. I won't go through them all now. That's more technical, which can be done at a later stage if you wish. But the main reason that loan backs fail is because the loan has to be secured on a first charge basis. And quite often the clients, the members, don't have property or land that doesn't have a mortgage on it. And that's the issue with loan back. It has to be secured, and that's an HMRC regulation. So there's no room for movement on that at all. Sort of commercial properties that we see being bought by SIPPs and SSAS, retail properties, shops and restaurants. And very often, shops and restaurants, they are mixed-use properties. And this is where you'll find that the shop or the restaurant is below, and then above, there is a residential flat. Now, pensions can't own residential property, flats or so on. There is an exemption, which I'll sort of come on to in a sec, because it's much easier to explain. But in that sort of instance, that's a mixed-use property. And generally what happens is that the shop and the residential property are separated by individual titles. So go to Land Registry and create individual titles for the residential and commercial. The freehold goes with the residential, and a long lease is created for the commercial below. And also they have to have separate entrances and exits. So you wouldn't have the same door to the restaurant below, and then you walk through the restaurant and get to the flat above. That wouldn't be allowed. So some sort of thought has to go into the entrance and exits of the two separate properties. We're seeing lots of office properties being bought, of course, industrial units, warehouses. Dental surgeries and vets, we're seeing very definitely an uptick in the number of those sorts of practices where multiple members are coming together and either having a SAS or a SIPP. If it's going to be a SAS, it's got to be a limited company that they have. But we're seeing more dental surgeries and vet practices going in. Hotels, public houses, nightclubs, always been popular. Now, I mentioned earlier about sort of an exemption with regards residential property. Public house, a pub, perfect example. So you got the pub below, residential flat above. In that instance, the pension can buy the whole property, subject to that residential flat above being used by a non-connected employee of the business. So a manager needs to be on site at a pub 24 hours a day, basically. So in that instance, that would be allowed, subject to it being contractual that the manager has use of the property above, the residential property above. In that instance, then the residential and the commercial bit below the public house can be purchased by a pension. Nursing homes, children's homes, garages, showrooms, agricultural land. We're seeing again an increase in interest in that. We have to be careful. It's perfectly feasible for agricultural land and brownfield sites to go in, subject to the member's own residential property not being connected to that land. If that's the case, it becomes quite difficult because of boundaries and all sorts of things. But it's possible. Pros and cons. If you've got property in a pension, then the rental income coming in from that property, no tax on it. Those rental payments, they don't count towards the annual allowance because they're not treated as contributions. The rent payments from the company, well, that can reduce their corporation tax. As time goes on, when the property is looking to be sold, there's no capital gains tax on the capital value of that property. All the rental income, it goes into the SIPP or SAS bank account, and then you and your clients decide where that can then be reinvested. Don't keep it in the cash account. It earns interest, but not a great deal. So get it moved into things like trustee investment plans, discretionary fund managers. It's whatever really you decide. And if the company gets in financial difficulty, well, the property is owned by the SIPP and the SAS, so it remains an asset of the pension scheme. Right, issues with property. It's not a business asset of the company, so it can't be used as loan security for the business. The tenants, obviously, paying rent to the SIPP and SAS, and if it's a connected tenant, so the member is using the business, the property themselves, then they've got to pay the market rate. No negotiation, HMRC rule. There's always that potential for the capital value of property to fall. Always got to bear that in mind. And if the property is unoccupied, then there are still costs to be paid, insurance and so on. So you always, clients always need to look at just how strong that tenancy is. How good is that tenant's business? It's not necessarily a good idea just to rush into property without seriously considering how good the tenant is and will be in the future. Always solicitor and surveyor fees involved with property purchase. And property is not a liquid asset. So you've got to consider what happens on death benefits. Does the property need to be sold out? There's always potential, of course, for the SIPP or the SAS to borrow. for that sort of incident, but something to bear in mind. Something to bear in mind, which I've not put on the slide here, development of a property. So if the client is looking to buy a property and it needs development to get it up to scratch, up to standard, then the SIPP or the SSAS has to pay for that development cost. And again, that's something to bear in mind when we're looking at how much money is sitting in the pension, buy the property and then develop it. Will there be enough money? Always something that needs looking at and considering. Client's choice on commercial property, as far as we're concerned, any RICS surveyor is fine. They can choose their own solicitors. Lenders for the SIPP or SSAS, again, they choose. And insurance brokers, of course, they can choose all those as well. All things, costs need to be considered. We allow freehold and leasehold. Most companies do, some don't. Part purchase of a commercial property. And this is sometimes when the clients don't have enough money in the pension. So they or their company will own part of the property and the pension will own the rest. We can also allow borrowing to allow the purchase of a property where there's not quite enough money in the pension. We can allow the connected party, sort of the client's own company, to be the lender to the SIPP or SSAS. Now that's quite interesting because that means then the interest rate, the interest payable rather, is not going to a bank. It's not going out, it's going to the company. So there's a win there for them. Has to be done on commercial terms, but it's something where, again, we've seen quite an increase in interest in that. VAT elected properties, always got to consider that VAT potential at the very beginning of the case, because the VAT has to be paid by the pension. So that means that you've got the SIPP, the SSAS, it's got to have enough money in it and or with borrowing to pay for the purchase price of the property plus the VAT, then calculate the stamp duty land tax of the VAT on top of the property purchase. And then that's the whole amount that has to be paid. Property purchase, VAT, then SDLT. The VAT will be reclaimed back into the pension, but the SDLT is lost. So again, when we're looking at the funding to buy a property with pension money, we have to consider the property purchase price, VAT, SDLT, plus the any potential development costs that I mentioned earlier. In terms of opportunities, one of the big opportunities we're seeing at the moment is regarding SSAS. And lots of new SSAS have been and are still being set up. Yeah, they need HMRC approval, but many of these SSASs are being set up without financial advisors, without you guys being involved. And some of them, unfortunately, are not being done correctly. Mistakes are being made, and then somebody's got to try and do something about it before it becomes a big problem. And we're definitely seeing more introductions coming from financial advisors who have accountants, and accountants are picking up clients who've got this sort of issue. There's ways of dealing with it, or dealing with these cases. Say a SSAS takeover, where we can look at the existing trustees and rules and take them over. Takes time, but we do a lot of that. And also there's potentially a way of effectively transferring the assets, whatever assets are in that SSAS, into another new SSAS or SIPP, and then winding the old SSAS up. That's more expensive, clearly, than a takeover because there are fewer costs involved. But we are seeing a big increase now. Well, not a big increase, we're seeing an increase in the number of these sorts of introductions coming to us. If you've got accountancy connections, very definitely worth mentioning, because sometimes clients have got them and they've got these things and they don't even mention it. So then it's up to the accountants to sort of get hold of them. We're here to help. Me and my fellow BDMs, when we talk about cases, introductions, we always look at what's the most suitable, potentially SIPP or SAS. There are reasons for both. Very often accountants come via the financial advisor and it's SAS, 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 SAS. That's not always the best solution. If it's for commercial property and it's not for loan back, then very often SIPPs are going to do just as good, if not a better job than SAS. Obviously, we're looking for clients where they're looking to invest in commercial property and or land. And again, you might have clients where their own company it owns the property that they're operating from. Well, it might well be advantageous. It could be an advantage for them to sell that property that they own personally or their company owns into a SIPP or SAS. Clearly, you've got to consider capital gains tax, but if the company wants a large capital injection and wants to get the property off its books, pension could be an ideal proposition. Obviously, where there are SIPP or SASs with other providers, if there are issues, we can have a look at. And from a technical point of view, we BDMs, we have access to a very, very good technical team at head office, and they can help us with all the odd issues and minutiae of things that can crop up with HMRC. So we're here to help. At the end of the presentation, once it's done, I'll at some point get a list of people attended, and I'll be able to get CPD certificates out. Me and my fellow BDMs will also, over the next few days, ensure that you've got copies of the slides. We will also just send emails around to everybody in the group, you and all the others who've not been able to make it, to introduce ourselves, just say, here we are, we can help. So that's me done. Any questions at all? If you have, please make sure they're easy. Okay, over to you.
Hi, Carl. Dan speaking. I did put a question in the chat, but I don't suppose you've seen it.
No,
but it's just regarding with XPS. I think I put the question in before your slide had answered the question, so apologies. But just to confirm, you can use XPS's own panel of conveyancers or solicitors, presumably, but they can also choose their own if required.
Yes, yeah, we've got as far as solicitors go, we've got about half a dozen around the UK. Excuse me. It's a non-mandatory panel. Quite useful if your client is not quite sure about the quote that they've been given from their own solicitors or conveyancers or insurers. You know, we do have access, so we can, if you like, give you an idea, indicative costing.
No,
so
that's
you know,
brilliant.
then the client's not being ripped off, Dan. Yeah.
And secondly, then presumably where you've got surveyors on board as well, when the likes of red book valuations are required for accounts and things, presumably they can take care of that if they don't have their own surveyor to do that.
We don't have a panel of surveyors. They can use their own. Yeah, you can choose any RICS qualified surveyor. Yeah.
Okay, fine. And then the last point of it then was when annual accounts are required. I mean, obviously the whole idea, right, is to increase your relationship with your accountants that may or may not have referred this business on. But a lot of accountants I've dealt with, actually, because that's one of my selling points of trying to liaise with them is, you know, do you deal with SaaS accounts and things like that to try and promote them? But the ones I've dealt with don't. So do you have in-panel teams that deal with SaaS accounts and things for annual returns, etc.? Perfect.
And most certainly we've got two SaaS. We've got the practitioner SaaS, which is let's just call it a stripped down SaaS. Clients there do their own annual returns, which are getting more complicated. HMRC recently made them much more complicated. And then we have the administrator SaaS, costs about 9 to 10% more than the practitioner SaaS. The administrator SaaS, we do everything. And if we're asked to, we can also do
withdrawals, that kind of thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Excellent. Yes, all of that, we do it.
Brilliant. Excellent. Presumably then quote would be on a bespoke basis at the point of inquiry for that then, would
Mm.
it?
Yeah, the SSAS is unregulated, so we don't actually need to provide a formal quotation. But what we BDMs do is cost each scheme out every time we get a case that is a proposition. So if you came to me, if you're in my area, Dan, you would give me the details of the client. I cost it out for you, so you'll see it. And of course, you get the fee schedule, but I cost it out anyway.
Excellent. Brilliant. That's good.
Good.
Thank you very much. Thank
Cheers,
you.
sir. Pleasure.
There's some more questions, Carl, in the chat section.
Right, where are we? I've got rid
Right
of
at the
that.
top.
Right,
You see
okay.
where it says chat? If you go into chat.
So I'm just dropping my screen down. Here we are. Right, okay. Is the SaaS pricing on your website? Yep, yeah, but I mean, we'll send the fee schedules out to you anyway. The practitioner SaaS and the administrator SaaS. But yes, on the website. But me and my fellow BDMs will ensure get these on an email anyway, just so you don't have to go digging. Investac and DCD. Investac. Oh, love them. Yeah, Investac, good company, been around for a while. Their pricing is very good. We will be slightly more expensive. I won't hide that. We have a devoted technical team, which gives us a bit of an advantage maybe, but I won't knock Investac in any way. Our service is very good. Investac is very good. What I would say is Investac have just been bought by private equity. They have now become a very, very, very large group. A question has to be raised about service. When companies grow very quickly and become, let's say, in Investac's case now, large, there can be strains on service issues. We are not in that game. We are not looking to grow in any other way, basically, but organically. We have done some acquisitions of companies in the past, but they are smaller. Investac and private equity, that's taken it to a different league. That's all I'd say on that. We are positioned very well. If you get a case, be it SIPP or SSAS, give us a shot, because there's no commitment, but there's nothing wrong with just giving us a shot to see how we stack up. And as I say, me and my fellow BDMs will always be happy to price a case out at the beginning, so you know exactly what the client's going to be in for. Does that, sorry, I mean, VAT returns. Oh yeah, okay, done with that one. Right, okay. Anything else? Let's have a look.
Sorry, Carl, down again. Is
Yeah.
there a limitation on the third-party wrapper accounts that you can hold within either of the SIPPs or SSASs, i.e. platforms, or is it, presumably there's limitations, you don't have all of them, presumably?
We've got most.
Is there a list or a centralised list anywhere by any chance, please?
No, not really. Just ask us if there's anybody in particular that you're looking to use. If it's one of the main players, the big ones, even some of the very small ones, so long as they meet the minimum criteria that we require, then they're going to be on there. We've got 10,000-ish SIPP and SSAS. So we've got a lot of DFM, a lot of platform, a lot of trustee investment plans set up with various providers. You probably only find if if you come across a client who wants to use something that is very, very niche. In that case, I mentioned the technical team earlier. The technical team would take some information, they would look at it, do some due diligence, and if it stacks up, we just put them on and say, yeah, the client can use. But there isn't exactly a list that I can send over to you, unfortunately.
Fine. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okie doke. There we go. Right. Other chats? Is that it?
I think there were some more questions gone in there.
Can't for me to. Okay, let's have a look. Mohan, I can only see the 3 questions here at the moment. Let's have a look. Where are they?
Hi, Carl. It's Don Marley. Can you hear me okay?
I can indeed, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I think Martin's probably referring to the question I just put in, which probably follows on from the question that Dan asked. So we do a number of SaaS transactions, and it was me that had asked about Investac and Day Cooper Day, which are typically the providers we use at the moment. So Insignis Cash Platform is a product that I use quite regularly. Again, within SaaS, as where there's a protracted a kind of property purchase. Can we hold Insignis Cash Platform in your SaaS product?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. We do a lot of Insignis and a lot of Flagstone. Yeah. Yeah.
No more questions from me. Thank you.
Okie dokie, sir. I've got a problem with my chat and I just can't see everything and I don't know why.
I think that's all the questions. Unless anybody else.
Yeah, my chat is just not on the right hand side, just not working there. Doesn't matter, but anybody got any other questions? Nope. Don't think so.
All the emails are in there in the chat section, Carl, if you want to send out CPD certificates to these guys.
Yeah, will do. I'll make sure.
Yeah, they're all in there.
Yeah, lovely. That's okay. If nobody else has got any other questions, we can call that a day, and I will be in touch with my fellow BDMs just to let them know what we've done here. We are on panel, and we will make sure that we get information out. As I say, the CPD certificates and the slides. Do you want to distribute those, Mohan, or shall I
send them to us and we'll distribute those out.
All right.
With the recording. Yeah. Now, thank you very much, Carl. Thank you for your webinar. Wonderful. And we'll get that out to everyone.
That's lovely.
They can watch at their own leisure. Appreciate that.
Thanks very much. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
Cheers, all the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.